Hatep, my name is Nasud Atun Hutep Imre Akantumre. I'm a student teacher, the master teacher of Partner Babylon, also known as Malachi Kubena York, who has been falsely kidnapped, and falsely, incarcerated. And the belly of the beast, and our job is here is to teach the teachings of our master of Wu-nuwaupu. You know what I'm saying? And this is our question and answer classes that we have established. So you can ask any questions you want. We have online questions that we answer also. So anybody, if you want to answer any questions, the microphone's right there, and feel free to ask questions.
All right, I tell brothers, I'm going to start this class off with the online question.
Yeah.
And our first question is from Stephen Cole. And he wants to know, he said, when we go out into space, is the sun black? Yes or no? And if so, how or why do they show us a picture of the sun appearing to be red when they show us a flare from the telescope flying around space? They always show the sun being red, never black.
Yes, the sun is black. This is why that if you study this in certain books and then you look about Hitler was fascinated with the occult world, and he represented a thing called the black sun. And the reason why is because the swastika was the representation of the black sun. You know what I'm saying? They came out of India. That's why he referred to his people as the Aryan nation. And we know that the word Aryan means what? Noble. So you have the European Aryan, and then you have the Indo-Aryan, that the Indo-Aryan as the Indians that came out of India. You feel what I'm saying? So what happened is, as our master teacher said before, is that when you deal with the spheres or the atmospheres of the planet Earth, right? The radiation that comes from this black sun, when it hits the atmosphere, you're not seeing light, but you're seeing friction of energy re-entering the atmosphere that you call re-entry. This is why when spacecrafts come back into the Earth's atmosphere, they say what? It heats up, right? So what happens is when this radiation hits the atmosphere, or the seven spheres, it causes a what? Friction. Friction produces what? Heat, or the illusion of light. So you're looking at energy. You feel what I'm saying? And by you sitting here on the planet Earth, that radiation is hitting off your eyes. This is why you're able to see the illumination of things, or to see the colors and everything and so on. But once you're outside of the Earth's atmosphere, everything is pitch black. Now people say, well, NASA be out there in space and, we don't see no stars. This is what the so-called scientific community say, well, because of the planet, reflection off the sun, right? It voids out all the lights or all the stars in space, right? But if anyone who has been up in the Colorado mountains know that when you're being still in the city of Denver, when you look at nighttime, the stars are, because you're in the mountains. So you're actually more higher up, what they call it, above sea level, where you can actually see stars that you wouldn't even see in New York or Philadelphia or in Georgia. You feel me? But when you're up in the mountains, because you're closer, more stars are more visible. Because they also give off light, and when they hit the atmosphere, it causes friction. You feel what I'm saying? So what happened is, they have powerful telescope, which is the Hubble telescope is actually in space, right?
It's traveling.
They have filters. You wouldn't see the sunspots or the what do you call it? The eruption of the sun.
Solar flares.
Or the solar flares, right? If it's pitch black. So they have special type of lasers and type of filtering programs and stuff like that, where they actually put colors on it for you and give you a presentation of how it looks in color. You feel what I'm saying? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. This next question is, he said, did the master teacher, Dr. Malachi Z. York, ever try to get together with other leaders to spread the doctrine from the 60s and up?
Yes, he has. Many a times, the master teacher, if you have read a book called Whatever Happened to the New Islamic Hebrew Mission, the master teacher always was trying to bring the nation of Islam in with the Ansar Allah community, or the Nubian nation. Because remember, at one time, the master teacher said that Elijah Muhammad was the, what they call him, what was it, the forerunner? Huh? He was the forerunner to the master teacher. Meaning that what Elijah said, his job was to clean up the Negro, the pimps, the hookers, the con artists, the criminals, because we've been corrupted by being here in America for so long. Like our master teacher, Pt.1 said, that it took them 400 years to turn an African into a Negro. So Elijah Muhammad's job was to clean us up. And it was going to get to a point where he even said that Islam is not what I can give you, but he had to use something to clean you up. This is why if you look at through the world, right? Every time the Europeans would oppress African nations, a lot of them couldn't come together because of tribal rivalry. You hear me? And then what happened is when the tribes realized they've been bamboozled, well, the European will use one tribe against another tribe, and then eventually turn against that other tribe that worked with them, and then enslave them all, right? They use Islam as a catalyst to say, look, if we become Muslims and forget the tribal thing, we can actually come together. This happened in synagogue. A lot of tribes wouldn't come together, but when they took on Islam, they were able to overcome their oppressors. You know what I'm saying? But then what happened is you also got into another thing where you deal with the Arab slave trade. Well, a lot of these guys who converted to become Muslims started enslaving their own brothers. You feel me? And
like
took
the Moors?
Huh?
Like the Moors?
The Moor, exactly. Like certain Moors who say, I am an African Moor. I mean, not an African Moor, Islamic Moor. We ain't talking about the African Moors. It's a difference. We're talking about the Islamic Moors. You know what I'm saying? Who was, if you look at any pictures, you'll see pictures of old, what they call them, slavers. You hear me?
Yeah.
You'll see pictures of slavers with a red fez or tar bush on their head, and you'll see them have their own people chained up. These are the Moors that a lot of our Moors are claiming to say they be associated with. You feel me? So Elijah Muhammad knew that Islam is not what he wanted to give the nation Islam. Because if you look at the nation Islam's doctrine, it's not really an Islamic doctrine, it's more of a scientific doctrine. They also, a lot of their doctrine coincide with our doctrine because it's all factual. You know what I'm saying? So we talk about the earth's circumference and all this, and we talk about the Yakub, the devil, and all that, and about the creation of the pig from the great alchemist, Ibn Hatat. You know what I'm saying? This all falls in line with the doctrine of our ancient ones. You know what I'm saying? So what happened is, when these, Elijah Muhammad knew his time was coming to a near, he said, I think it was one of the old Saviors Week or something, or one of the old things, old recordings or something, where he said there's a brother from the East that's going to come. And you know what I'm saying? I don't know exactly into detail of it, but I have to look, it's on a tape called Racism in Islam that the master teacher did back in 1989, 1990, I think, right? Where he actually showed the actual clip where Elijah Muhammad mentions the master teacher's name at the time, which is Isa. You know what I mean? And he said that person who comes shall have extensive knowledge of the lamb symbol, which you know as the lamb. You know what I'm saying? The book of lamb, right? He will have the book of lamb. If you look today, the lamb that they was talking about was this book here, the Holy Tablet, because each chapter of Holy Tablet starts with the word lo, or lamb. You know what I'm saying? And he was letting you know that this is the lamb symbol, because the master teacher, as Imam Isa of the Ansar Allah community, had broke down the word lamb so many times in the books, or it gave you what it means. You know what I'm saying? So what happened is, the master teacher was the person, the successor, that was supposed to come after Elijah Muhammad. But what happened is, when Warf D. Muhammad took over the nation of Islam, he was like, I'm the successor. You know what I'm saying? Then he took over and then sold his people out to what? Sunni Islam. The Farrakhan said he's the successor. You know what I'm saying? And he did great works in his day and time. To the point that our master teacher said, look, on the tape called Racism in Islam, the master teacher said, look, Farrakhan is a speaker. He's a better speaker than I, right? This is the quote from the master teacher, right? He said, but I'm a better writer.
See, Mr. Minister Louis Farrakhan is the best speaker we got today. That's right. You understand? We both serve a purpose. We came in a pair. So every time somebody came as a single, you didn't listen. We came as a pair this time. You follow that? Follow Elijah. I'm the writer, and he's the speaker. That's right. I heard Minister Louis Farrakhan say, there's nobody out here that can speak like me. And I watched his tape, and I said, he's right. He's a better speaker than I am, by far. By far. But then I said, but there's nobody out here who writes like I do.
He said, but I'm willing to go under Farrakhan if we can come together to save our people. But many times the master teacher reached out to him and never got no response. So the same thing that Warf D. Muhammad is guilty of selling the nation Islam out to Sunni Islam, now Farrakhan is aligning the nation Islam with Scientology that has nothing to do with the teachings of Elijah Muhammad.
And his people.
And his people.
They're not tempted. And it's funny you say that because the time when he made that statement, I was in Chicago. We had a tabernacle there, and he had sent the emir of our tab to talk to Farrakhan to see if we can come together. And Farrakhan's words were, the only thing we come together on is economics. He didn't want to join. That was it.
All right. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
His other question is, he said, why did or do people fear death if they know it's the doorway to a higher life? Even our ancestors thought that death could be cured. My question is why, if it's the doorway to a higher life?
Oh, you said what? Repeat that one more time. I'm trying to get.
He wants to know, why do people fear death if they know it's the doorway to a higher life? And he said, even our ancestors thought that death could be cured. And his question is, no, why? And why do people fear it?
He said, why do our ancestors?
No.
Or he said,
why
why
do people fear death when they know it's the doorway to a higher life?
Yeah.
You know, and he said, even our ancestors knew they thought it could be cured. And he wants to know, why do people fear death if they know it's the doorway to a higher life?
Okay. Not everybody knows that the death is the doorway to another life. We got to understand that our people have always associated death with something bad. Because people say, well, I'm living good, I'm eating good, I'm having fun, right? And they know at a certain time that when you get old and actually growing older, is, like our master teacher, Pt.1 has said, is actually a blessing and a gift. Because sometimes if you're enjoying your life, we'll say, oh, I can party all day, that means you dancing all day, drinking, jumping up and down, right? You know what I mean? Or having fun, having sex all day, right? As a young man, you have so much energy, you can do so much things, right? Your activity level is at such a high point, you know what I mean? But what happened is, if you stay young like that for a long period of time, you'll never stop partying. You will burn yourself to the point where you'll kill yourself by accident. You're like, this guy overworked his heart. Everything gave up his hip. You heard the stories. 23-year-old guy on a dialysis machine, you hear me? Because the guy was eating candy. He couldn't stop eating chocolate. Or you heard the story about the guy who only ate McDonald's and had to go to the hospital because he drank no water. You hear me? He always ate hamburgers and french fries from McDonald's. You know what I'm saying? And then he wondered why his kidney went out. You feel what I'm saying? Because he has no filter. And he's in the hospital getting his stomach pumped, and they put him on an IV to try to get his fluids back up because this guy is dehydrated. And remember that the master teacher has said that we are 75% water. So if you're dehydrated, you're actually dead. You feel me? Because 75% of your body is water. You know what I'm saying? So you became like a human desert. So the whole thing is that a lot of people fear death because they do not want to end the party sometimes. Because, like I said before, the message said being old becomes a blessing, because when you start getting older, you say, well, I can't do that no more. Oh, yeah, how about jumping off that building? I did that when I was younger. I can't do that no more. Because now you're thinking like, you remember before, you used to jump off the top of a car and have fun and run real fast and hurt and jump over rails and fences and stuff. And you look at now, when you get older, you be like, man, that fence is kind of high. I know I'm taller. I know I can do it. I did it before 20 years ago, but then you're thinking now that if I hop this fence, there's a possibility that my leg might not go all the way over this fence. I'll trip, fall, and now you're thinking like, my bones don't heal like they used to. Right or wrong, huh? So you might crack your ankle, snap, bruise your back, and then you're in that crib for months trying to heal your back. And then this is the gift, this is the beauty of slowing down your activities. Oh, I can't drink that no more. It might hurt my spleen. You feel me? So certain things that you do, I said, oh, I can't eat that no more. Then you like, it doesn't go to the system the same. Like, I can't eat that hot sauce no more. I'm too old for that. So now you're just relaxing. And what the older people used to do, they sit back, they relax, and they just enjoy life.
That's right.
And people say, why you just sit there all day and do nothing? I said, I'm happy. I'm cool. I did my time. This is the old saying people say, like, I would give $1 million to be young again. But would you replace what you learned? They said, no, I can't. I will never give up my experiences just to be young again. Because people know that them experiences are very precious. To go start a clean slate over again. Nah, I like my experiences. I'll just stick this way. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so what happened is, the death thing is what happened is we were put into fear by the religious doctrine, because in ancient times, they always talked about the lake of fire. If you die, shall be burned forever. As a child, the first pain you usually feel is when the doctor smacks you in the butt. You know what I'm saying? The second pain you feel when your mom told you don't touch the stove. And you touch the stove anyway. And you burnt your hand. And you pull back and say, oh, your mom put some butter on it or some oil in it, you know, and healed you up, and you know, and you're like, oh, I won't do that no more. This is why everybody knows that the first thing you do with a child is say, do not touch the stove. Because you already know they're going to touch the stove. You know what I'm saying? So we got caught up in this lake of fire doctrine. That's why the master teacher said, is it an oil fire? Is it an electrical fire?
Is it
a wooden fire? Is it a gas fire, right?
What kind of fire
What caused this hell to be burning for so long? But people get like that, well, I don't want to be burned forever. But forever? What type of God will burn you forever?
And ever.
I mean, you know, I want you to just waterboard me. You know what I mean? Yo, God, put me towel on my face and just keep dropping water on me, but don't burn me. I think waterboarding would be actually a blessing as opposed to getting burnt all over your body. You hear me?
Forever.
You feel me? Forever. Because you said, well, I disobeyed you. But we know in our doctrine, I think it was in a book called Man from Planet Risk. Let me see if I can find it. When it was breaking down what hell really was. And hell wasn't actually the lake of fire that we was deceived in thinking it was. Actually, the lake of fire was actually, hold on, let me see if I can find it. It's on, I think it was on page, hold on, let me see, 118. It's on Man from Planet Risk. Those that are left behind while these Zadokins are being taught will be in such a disarray, meaning the reptilians will take over. Once the 144,000 return with Tammuz, who you call the Messiah, they would turn as kings of kings, and descend to a mountain, and the reptilians will try to climb the mount to battle you. But the Igigi, those who stayed on the ship Nibiru, will use the four winds craft and hurl fires to the earth to wipe out the reptilian. Zu-in himself will be taken to risk, will he be put in a lake of fire. This lake of fire is a Briskian prison that burns like sulfur and oil put beneath it, and he can't get past it. It's like a big, massive ball of energy that he was put in before he got out. You understand what I'm saying? So this is what our master teacher broke down about what the lake of fire really was. You hear me? But we were told later on when the Caucasians or the Luciferians got their hands on that information and made it into something real super spooky, and they said, oh, you're going to burn forever. And we know from certain other doctrine that lake of fire was actually talking about the extraterrestrial vats where they were cooking us. You feel me? You know, in the pots. So what happened is when you're dealing with death, you had an Egyptian Eternal Life After Death. Hold on a second, let me find this real quick. Inside the book Eternal Life After Death, I want to read how the Egyptians viewed and dealt with death. Because our ancestors didn't have those, those hang-ups about, oh, we're going to die. And you understand that when the Egyptians died, they had elaborate funerals that were almost better than parties.
What you're about to, that leads into a second question about, you're going to read the question he had. He said, I recently lost my mother a few days ago, and I miss her very much. My question is, do Nuwaupians celebrate death, and how do you handle it from a Nuwaupian point of view? So, what you're going to go into, I guess, is going to go into that.
Okay. It's in a book called The Eternal Life After Death. I think it's on page 135, right? What did the Egyptians think about life after death? In ancient Egypt, death was not looked upon as a time for mourning, but as a natural cycle of life. The Egyptians firmly acknowledged in an afterlife or a reincarnation of cells, which led them to build great monuments as tombs for the deceased ones. Their burial traditions were unlike any other ancient or modern civilization that ever existed. At death, the deity Anubis, also called the Mater deity of the dead, is represented as a black-headed jackal, dog with a tail, or a man with the head of a jackal, dog. And it breaks down how he says he serves as a messenger. So our ancient, he said, what type of ceremonies were performed for the deceased in preparation for the afterlife? The Egyptians performed many ceremonies for the deceased to help them pass through the dangers of the underworld and attain the afterlife of the Egyptians, and or in the terms of Anu, both meaning heaven. Magical spells were recited over the dead, embalming the Egyptians to invoke protection to help the deceased on their journey to the afterlife. One of the ceremonies was the opening of the mount ceremony, So what happened is our ancestors knew how important your burial was and what death really was. They knew that death was actually the end of your existence. They knew that it was the end of your physical life. This is why in the scriptures, in the Bible, as our master teacher has taught us, that when God is supposed to be an all-living being, right? But he's not a physical being. So he's not living. If he was a living being, then he will be in a living flesh. But spirit is supposed to exist on the other side of what you call life. So once you become a spiritual being, according to religious doctrine, you're supposed to die first, then become spiritual. Or what they call an angelic being or a heavenly host. You feel me? But they saying that in order for, we get caught up in this so-called Christ consciousness mind, Islamic, Muhammad, Judaism, that we don't even see how life really is. So when you die, as our ancient ancestors viewed it, they viewed it as you will die physically, but you will exist in another state of existence. But people are so caught. I remember the message that said, I'm pretty sure you remember this, Abby, that people said they're so caught up in the physical desires of the planet Earth, they don't realize that the other side is way better. But they can't comprehend that it'll be better because all they can go by is what they got now. And the message teacher said, you don't realize what you're losing. You can actually perfect your being here and go to another state of existence, which is total what? Bliss. Remember that? You know what I'm saying? But cats are like, no, I like those Snicker bars. Oh no, that sex is good. Oh no, that Coca-Cola. I just like the way that acid just hit my throat. You feel me? You know what I'm talking about. Man, but yeah. So we as the Wapians, we don't sit there and mourn our deceased unless they would die a violent death. But we celebrate. You know what I'm saying? That's why we have our balloon ceremonies and we have a celebration. We play music and we reflect about the good things this person did in their life. You know what I'm saying? We don't sit here and boo-hoo because this is how they bring you down. This is not how we do it. Anybody know, like one of the best ceremonies for funerals is where?
Louisiana.
New Orleans, they call it with the second line. I used to live in New Orleans. And when I first went down there, I didn't understand nothing about their culture. All I know is that somebody died. They got a big statue, but everybody was like, and they were playing the horns and the drum. I said, what the heck is that? And all, New Orleans was real violent back then, so you actually saw a second parade.
Hey, that was that
the
Egyptian
second
jeans
line
coming
almost
out.
every day because they was, at the time I moved down there, I was sent from New York to be down there to teach and propagate and stuff like that. This was like 92. 92, 93 was like the time when New Orleans was actually the murder capital of the world at the time, of the United States, right? And people were getting smoked. You know what I mean? And all I know is every other day, it was a second line going on. And people were smiling. Nobody was crying, but they was like just jamming. And I was like, damn, this is crazy.
That's what I'm
but
saying.
Then I start realizing that, it's not, we sit there and we cry and and we miss our people, but they in the better space than we are right now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so why not
And all we
celebrate?
can do is say, look out for me while you're on the other side. Don't forget about me. You know what I'm saying? This is why we refer to our ancestors, like your grandmom, your grandfather who passed on, as your overseers. And the word for overseer in the ancient, Napatan tongue is what? Natharu. You feel me? They are Natharu. But a lot of people looking for Osiris and Isis and Seth and them. They are Natharu too, but the closest one that you can relate to is Mama. Like my brother Kid be saying, Mama right there, grandmama,
That's right.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
Before you go there, I like to, you ready? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, this question is coming from a person named Calvin Bermant. And he says, my question can be found in the 3-minute mark on a class given October 3rd, part 2. He said, you mentioned Krill putting out information. Was Elijah Muhammad aware that he was guided by Krill?
Repeat that one more time.
He wants to know, you mentioned that Krill was putting out information. He wants to know, was Elijah Muhammad aware that he was guided by Krill?
Okay, let me look at, I've seen a couple spots where I saw that before. Hold on, I gotta cross-reference. Okay. In the book Holy Tablets, I think it's on page 288. It's 281, I think. In the Scientist, it's called Chapter 3, The Scientist, right? Repeat the question one more time so I can get this down. I can understand it. One more time, please.
He wants to know if Elijah Muhammad was aware that he was guided by Krill.
Okay, I got you. The Lahumunians would use the Morcadians as their servants. This is on page 281, verse 370, chapter 3 of the Holy Tablets of Science. It's called the Scientists. And they have been visiting this planet for thousands of years. They refer to their planet as the early morning star. They vowed to send a Venerian, which you know a person from Venus, as a savior to the new Asiatic black man. To him, he would appear in a person coming from Arabia. Now, this sounds familiar, though. Anybody who's in Nation Islam will understand what I'm talking about. His mother will be called Mami, who is of the Chaldean god. They'll spell it Mimi, the Kuttite. And his father, El-Fuz, from the Greek of Lithos, meaning anointed, or Afus, or Afonso. Old Greek for leprosy, from the word Afons, meaning white, absent of pigment, albinism. A form of psychosis, psoriasis. They'll spell his name Afonso and declare he is a Cushite. He was one of the original incarnated deities. Stop right there. Back in the day, the master teacher will always say that master fraud Muhammad was not a law. But Elijah Muhammad will say that he came as a law in a what? Personage. So the master teacher wasn't saying Elijah Muhammad was wrong, because the master teacher always said that Elijah Muhammad was what? 100% right and exact. But what happened is that when you're dealing with people from the Sunni Ahmadiyya and the other sects from the Islamic world, they say, oh, you're trying to say he's Allah, stuff Allah. You hear me? So at the time, the master teacher knew what he was saying, but we didn't comprehend what he was saying. He is saying that this being was an incarnated deity. So he will be Allah, according to what the word Allah means, these beings. You hear me? Anybody could be Allah. They said that according to who's the Asiatic black man that want to make a creator planet or follow civilization, God of the universe. 5%ers in the Nation Islam say they're gods, but you'll never hear some of them say, well, I'm Allah. But Allah, according to the Arabic language, will be Allah. You hear me? So why couldn't you say that? Because you'll have problems with the Arabs. Oh, you can't say Allah. These guys will shoot AK right down your throat, like it's it's like it's Patron or something. You feel me? So the whole thing is that he said an incarnated being. You hear me? No, he said incarnated deity, not man. Notice he didn't say not man, right? This Venerian, they will call their God incarnated. So at the time, according to the Holy Tablet, this being was an incarnation of another being that took over the flesh of this person. You hear me? He will lead them an agreeable humanoid Romardian as a teacher named Krill. You got that, right? Huh? I'm going to go back again. You ever read that before or you forgot? He will lead them an agreeable humanoid Romardian as a teacher named Krill. Who's they talking about? Okay then. Okay, right here. It's not even inside the Man's Planet of Risk book. It is in a book called, damn, hold on just a second. It's in a book called Who Lived Before the Adam and Eve Story. It's actually on page, damn, I don't even know what page it is. It's on page 64, I think, right? Who did these extraterrestrials make contact with when they came again in the year 1960? In 1960, after seeing the turmoil that the earth was under, the elders decided to reincarnate and make contact with the Pentagon in hoping of making another agreement with them. And through the minds of people that they would talk to, we're going to stop right there. Through the minds of the people that they would talk to, right? You understand what I'm saying right now, right? This is showing you how these beings will be able to communicate. See, what happened is this. When we say that Elijah Muhammad came, they said they sent him an agreeable humanoid Romardian, right? We know that Elijah Muhammad don't look like Krill, but he doesn't look different than any other human being on the planet Earth, though, right? You hear me? But you can see the similarities of an extraterrestrial type of look that Elijah Muhammad had, which is an Asian type look, right? Now, he's not walking around like no grain, like an alien, right? So actually, when they were talking about the being, they were talking about a incarnation. As our master teacher, Pt.1, because he's an incarnated being also. You know what I'm saying? When people say, oh, well, he's Melchizedek and he's Murdoch and he's Amanubi or Akata Zedi, you know what I'm saying? He's El Cook and he's Atumre, you feel what I'm saying? Amunre. They wasn't talking about the actual flesh being, but they was talking about the deity that incarnated into the flesh. You feel me? So when you read this right here, make contact with the, in hopes of making an agreement with them through the minds of people they would talk to, they will put a person under a hypnotic spell, trance, and they will ask questions, and Krill or one of the other commanders will speak through that person and give them information about the universe. That's in our doctrine. You know what I'm saying? That's inside the book called Who Lived Before, the Adam and Eve story. That's on page 64.
Sure.
And with that, I'd like to pass the class over to my brother, Sir Matusi Hitep Kawit.
That's it. Good to see everybody out again. Another Friday class. All right. You got internet questions for me, right?
Yeah, this is Stephen Cole. He wants to know. He says, can you explain to me the omniverse down to the universe, and how does each relate to us? Also, does the different planes tie into them? Like the plane of force, spiritual plane, mental plane, and so on.
Can I get you to read that for me again?
Okay, he says, can you explain to me the omniverse down to the universe? How does each relate to us? And also, does the different planes tie into them, like the plane of force, the spiritual plane, the mental plane, and so on?
Okay, I'll do my best. That's a heavy question, huh? First thing first, I would have to make sure that we give as a reference to what our master teacher has given to us, which has been given through him as a revelation to Nuwaupians everywhere, being Patarak, or the way. This is the way of Nuwaupians, and this is Wu-nuwaup. I would assume, well, I don't want to assume. Let's say for your question, you're asking about omniverses, multiverses, triverses, dual verses, and all the way down to universes. So with that being the question, the answer is found within Patarak called All Expanding. If we go to All Expanding, as the master teacher has explained and expounded upon within its pages, we can go to start at verse 39. It says, well, let's not do 39. Let's go to verse 37. It says, so put all is in tune, linked to time and energy. 38, the birth and death in order to renew energies and powers for producing new and young universes or children, you. 39, who is the supreme being, nature unlimited in every way, as a part of all, as the all is, I am. Now this goes directly into answering the question. 40, as omniverse, you are all space without need of movement or growth. As multiverses, you are all things with movement and growth. As triverses, you are reaction with each other and become places. As dual verses, you are separated into opposites and become opposing places. As universes, you are a point in space, time, and material. And as such are in fact all time during your existence of countless supreme beings of nature, once in tune with your tone. Do not, as those of us who have been fooled, take no thing and something and call it by a name, such as God, Yahweh, Jah, or Allah. Do not accept anything as unseen powers. Do not accept something as one. Do not worship what other races call divine, call supreme beings, or call your creator without confirmation. This you know, that you exist. This you realize, that you're real. This you must accept that you are something or the sum of a thing. So before we go too far away from your question, we ask a question about what are omniverses, what's the multiverse, triverses, dual verses, and universe, and you ask how it relates to you. right?
Sure.
And he also asked about, do these particular variant planes relate to these particular titles that we have being spoken of from Omniverse down the universe, right?
He wants to know, does the different planes tie into them?
Okay. You wouldn't be able to say that the different planes tie into them. For instance, if you say omniverse, omniverse is all space without need of movement or growth. So therefore, if you're talking about planes that exist, these planes exist within the omniverse. So it's related by being inside of the omniverse itself. Then it explains, you go into the next stage from omniverse down. But like it says, as multiverses, you're all things with movement and growth. So then if we start talking about the planes where you have movement, such as when we talk about the plane of force, the master teacher said, he used as an analogy talking about the plane of force. He explained, it's the essence of the thing. Like he was talking about for an apple. He said, like, you remember when he explained the thing about the apple? Like an apple's purpose is for you to be able to receive its nutrients, right? And the nutrients is the essence of what it is. If it falls from that tree and then it just rots, it's almost like, if you put it into that analogy that he gave us, it's like it didn't make it to its heaven. It basically like made it to hell, because its purpose at that point to get the nutrients into you was its heaven. And the plane in which the nutrients exist, he explained, was the plane of force. So then if we're talking about a level where these nutrients are at, you know, just below, well, within the elements and just below the elements, talking about energy, we could say, okay, that exists and there's movement there. You follow? So of course that exists within what we're seeing as the multiverses, as all things with movement and growth. Then he talks about the triverses. Another actual fact to refer to with that is Egyptian ontology and mythology. When it talks about the third person being, it talks about how you have those 2 points. And for instance, he explained with the triverse being created, or the way that we utilize chanting, said you have the ability to be the cause of a new outcome. So with our positive thinking and things of that nature, you're able to create, and that instance in and of itself becomes Pt.1 in the level of a triverse, being that you have created a reaction from 2 particular things that can be looked at as being a positive thing or a negative thing, just based on how it affects you. So the best answer really is for you to go to All Expanding, read through verses 40 through 45, and that gives you definite breakdown of those particular verses as they relate to each other, being that all comes from all, and all, as omni means within their language, all, you know, all of it comes from all, just like we've always taught. You have put down into Pt.1. Everything else that exists with input is Pt.1, is all in all. So yeah, that would be the best reference. And then, like I say, if you want to go into seeing how triverse is made, you can refer to ontology or mythology. You can even go into actual fact number 18, where it talks about how you create harmony as far as triads, where you take 3 notes in order to make a triad chord or what have you like that, taking those 3 parts, you know, on into the point to where you have parents, you know, you can take 2 souls mating for the continuity of life, the continuity of existence. You bring those 2 parts together in order to create another thing. So he's explained it in multiple ways, but the first stop would definitely be to go or seek out All Expanding, Patarak. Elder, you had a question, did you not?
Yes. In Existence, How and Why, page 15, they take our souls, but it burns out after 9 months of the use. And I wanted to know what that means. How can the soul burn out when it is eternal?
Okay. In this particular situation, when it's speaking, first off, we understand this. When we talk about soul and we talk about spirit, throughout our years as far as being within religion and the different religious schools, we were taught, and for that degree, it was relative to the degree. When we say soul, we thought soul was one thing, we thought spirit was one thing, and so it was only soul and it was spirit, right? since the Masters explained to us that we have two types of soul and two types of spirit. Okay, so that now as we're raising in information, we have the ability to see more. Like he explained, let's go to, which one do I want to go to as a reference? And this is not only for you and your question, but it's also for everybody, you know. That's the beauty of the internet. If we go to Patarak the Prism, and also Patarak Soul, Soul, Spirit, Spirit, where we're able to define, you know, these particular ones. You have, it says, this is how the ancients recorded it. Verse 156 from the Prism, okay? This is how the ancients recorded it. 157, Pa-nafas, the spirit, is the spirit body and linked to your mental. Or Pa-ka, the spirit is the body's plasmatic being, the person, spirit being. When a child is born, nafas, spirit, may possess their body, yet those ka'u existed ever since creation. 159, Pa-rawa, the soul or breath, is the inhaled life force, the first breath in the physical world outside of the mother's womb. 160, Pa-ba, the soul or emotional breath, existed ever since creation. So, and then 161, all four are born or grew out of Pa-achak, the etheric being, which exists before creation of spirits or souls. All right, so with that particular part, what we've established, or by defining, right, we have established that you have Pa-nafas, which comes into, it's linked to the mental, right? You have Pa-ka, which is the body's plasmatic or the exoplasmic being. You have in that ka has existed ever since creation. You have Pa-rawa, which is also defined as a soul, but this particular one is the inhaled life force. Like when we talk about the fact we have a soul or a pilot light, soul like S-O-L from Latin for sun, saying when you took that first breath that lit your pilot light, that's referring to that particular rawa. But then that one is when it came in at your first breath. But then Pa-ba, the soul or emotional breath, because the soul or ba is the emotional you, or the emotional expressive you, or creative expressional being, as it's defined in Patarak, Soul, Soul, Spirit, Spirit, on the first page. All right? So we now have an understanding that we have two souls, two spirits. You have two that existed ever since creation. Now, the other thing is, if we go to Patarak, the Prism, we're taught that within the spirit realm, everything within the spirit realm, which is up under tabi al-taba, natural nature, has rules. The spirit realm has rules as well. You follow? So what we're being given access to on page 15 inside of Existence, How and Why, right? When it's expressing this particular part here about how these particular beings, their whole purpose, because they don't have a soul, right? Their whole purpose is to try to get to being able to use the soul that you have. But as a rule, at the level in which they are within ether, they can't maintain that. So it's not that it burns out itself as a whole. Pa-ba won't burn out itself as a whole, right? And I'll show you in a moment exactly why we have that answered in Patarak as to the fact that that doesn't burn out. So it's not talking about that particular soul burning out, it's talking about their usage of that. So therefore they have to go from one to the next. Now, how do we know that it doesn't burn out? The soul itself. Patarak, the Prism. Again, we'll skip forward. And no, before we do that, let's talk about the spirit rules, right? Where's the first verse that we speak of rules? Okay. In verse 192 of Patarak, the Prism, it says, spirits, or tarafu, or tayafu, ghosts, just as physical living people have rules limits, restrictions of their own, and those rules are binding by nature, which is what I was saying a moment ago, right? It says, much like the watts of an electric light and or incandescent glowing light or artificial light produced by glowing filament incandescence. As incandescence, incantation, magic spell, charm by man's kinds, made light, as you see on screens. By them they can send out their wicked images and incarnate, embody in flesh by incentive or arousing feelings inside the receiver of the evil incarnadine or crimson, blood red, their symbol of devil. So by the rules of spirit, if you accept them, they can enter your being and rule your emotions, being that they don't have a soul of their own. Verse 196, remember this, the living Celtics serve their dead, and they need you to trust them, to believe in them, to accept their images, their teachings, religions, legends, fictions. They will fade if you don't accept all they offer or give life to the image of them, the beast. And when you trust them in any way, they offer your soul to the dead and demon extraterrestrials they call their gods. So we say again in verse 198, so spirits have rules, since spirits are in fact conscious gas forces, as fluorescent light is created from trapped gas or neon atmospheric passing an electric current through a tube containing neon. Okay, now verse 209, so we can talk about further what are some of these rules, right? Verse 209, so their spirit beings invade your mind, and them as physical beings invade your land. They need to be welcomed, trusted, believed in, to take over your lives and offer your soul to their deities. Now, let's stop here for a moment, right? Not long ago, from a visit and an update, our master teacher had explained, our master teacher Panababi Anun explained that you see that what happened with these particular beings, being the physical incarnation of six ether on this planet, right? These beings, each place that they go, they try to gain the trust of the people there, right? Then they take over the land there, right? Remember what our master teacher taught us years ago. He said, if you want to see the nature, if you see the nature of a people, you'll see the nature of their God, right? So, like they said, just here, what they worship is their dead ancestors, who because they don't have a soul, they can't ascend higher than this realm, they're trapped. So they worship them here, still, and they have to feed that energy to them. And that's what they, remember when he told us to move from Athens? Why did he say move from Athens? He said those dead beings there were still feeding on our energy being there, not even being around our own people. So these beings are feeding on our energy, but we have to trust them first in order for them to be able to feed on our energy. Like we ended up having to trust them before slave trades came into place. We trusted them to certain degrees after they came and they stayed amongst us for so long. Look at what they try to do. Every time they go into a new tribe or a new undiscovered place to them, right? They get the people to trust them. You take your Red Cross in there. I come bearing gifts. I've got rights.
Bring the Bible.
And then, when you know what I'm saying, you come with the food and then you say, hey, Jesus brought this to you. So then now when we talk about our brothers and sisters over in the continent of Africa, the majority of those countries over there are so religious, either Christian or Muslim, because these people came and they gained the trust of people who had their own way. And they made us to go to a point to turn against our own culture, which disconnected us from our own spiritual connection to our ancestors. Because just like he explained about Dracula, Dracula can only come into your house if you invite him in. So once again, these are the rules. See? So we're talking about rules on a spiritual level. So it's like, okay, you have to give them all their stuff back, right? All right, but back to the point of the soul, right? Okay, let's talk about the soul in verse, hold on real quick. Let's go to verse 233 through 235 so we can talk about that part a little bit more, right? Spirit rules provide for the evacuation, this is 233. Spirit rules provide for the evacuation of all spirits just before or at the time of death of who they possess. Yet, the spirit or spirit forces, 29 in all, of your own are permanent. The invaders must leave from the person's lifeless body because they are not linked to the individual soul. The soul existed long before the birth of the person, yet they cannot keep the person alive. Only the spirit can bring one back if the soul has not departed the body. If the burning stops and the spirit are still in that person, the soul as